The Law of One, Session 26. This session is about the Bible, traumatic death, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, sex and energy blockages. I gotta say, this is another one of those really fascinating sessions, so let's get right into it. The questioner. Assuming that it is all right to continue, we're down to the last 3,000 years of this present cycle, and I was wondering if the Law of One in either written or spoken form has been made available within this past 3,000 years in any complete way, such as we're doing now. Is it available in any other source? And then Ra says, there is no possibility of a complete source of information of the Law of One in this density. However, certain of your writings passed to you as your so-called holy works have portions of this law. Questioner, does the Bible as we know it have portions of this law in it? Ra, correct. Questioner, can you tell me if the Old Testament has any of the Law of One? Ra, correct. Questioner, which has more of the Law of One in it, the Old Testament or the New Testament? Ra, withdrawing from each of the collections of which you speak, the portions having to do with the Law of One, the content is approximately equal. However, the so-called Old Testament has a larger amount of negatively influenced material, as you would call it. Questioner, can you tell me about what percentage is Orion influenced in both the Old and the New Testaments? Ra, we prefer that this be left to the discretion of those who seek the Law of One. We are not speaking in order to judge. Such statements would be construed by some of those who may read this material as judgmental. We can only suggest a careful reading and inward digestion of the contents. The understandings will become obvious. The questioner. Has Ra communicated with any of our population in this century, in the last, say, 80 years? Ra, no, we have not. Questioner, has the Law of One been communicated within the past 80 years by any other source to an entity in our population? Ra, the ways of One have seldom been communicated, although there are rare instances in the previous 80 years. There have been many communications from fourth density due to the drawing towards the harvest to fourth density. These are the ways of universal love and understanding. The other teachings are reserved for those whose depth of understanding recommend and attract such further communication. The questioner. Did the Confederation then step up its program of helping planet Earth sometime late in this last major cycle? It seems that they did from the previous data, especially with the Industrial Revolution. Can you tell me the attitudes and reasonings behind this step up? Is there any reason other than that they just wanted to produce more leisure time in the last 100 years of the cycle? Is this the total reason? Ra, about 200 years ago, a noticeable shift began to occur. A significant number of entities who had reached a certain level of spiritual maturity or seniority started incarnating on Earth with the primary purpose of learned teaching. These beings were more aware of their spiritual journey compared to those who were still focused on more basic lessons. This change signaled to us that it was the right time to initiate communication with humanity. During this period, wanderers began to arrive on Earth. Their first mission was to introduce ideas that respected the principle of free will. This foundational concept had to be established before more advanced and specific information could be shared by other wanderers. Essentially, the idea or thought process had to be set in motion before any concrete actions could follow. Questioner. I'm wondering if Abraham Lincoln could have possibly been a wanderer. Ra, this is incorrect. This entity was a normal Earth being which chose to leave the vehicle and allow an entity to use it on a permanent basis. This is a relatively rare This is relatively rare compared to the phenomenon of wanderers. So this would basically be a walk-in soul. You would do better considering the incarnations of wanderers, such as the one known as Thomas, the one known as Benjamin. Questioner, I'm assuming you mean Thomas Edison and Benjamin Franklin. Ra, incorrect. Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin. Questioner, thank you. Can you tell me what density the entity that used Abraham Lincoln's body came from and where? Ra, this entity was fourth vibration. Questioner, I assume positive. Ra, correct. Questioner, was his assassination by any way influenced by Orion or any other negative force? Ra, correct. Questioner, thank you. In the recent past of the last 30 to 40 years, the UFO phenomena has become known to our population. What was the original reason for? I know there have been UFOs throughout history, but what was the original reason for the increase in UFO activity in the past 40 years? Ra, information which Confederation sources have offered to Albert Einstein became perverted, and instruments of destruction began to be created. Examples of this being the Manhattan Project and its product, information offered through the Wanderer, Nikola Tesla, also being experimented with for potential destruction. Example, your Philadelphia experiment. Thus, we felt a strong need to involve our thought forms in whatever way we of the Confederation could be of service in order to balance these distortions of information meant to aid your planet. The questioner, then what you did, I am assuming, then is to create an air of mystery with the UFO phenomena, and then by telepathy send many messages that could be either accepted or rejected under the following, of course, the law of one, so that the population would start thinking seriously about the consequences of what they were doing. Is this correct? Ra, this is partially correct. There are other services we may perform. Firstly, the integration of souls or spirits in the event these nuclear devices are used in your space-time continuum. This the Confederation has already done. Questioner, I don't fully understand what you mean by that. Could you expand a little? Ra, the weapons that transform matter into energy, such as those used in conflicts, have a unique effect. They can disrupt the natural process of transitioning from the physical world, space-time, third density, to the spiritual realms, time-space, third density, which some might refer to as the afterlife or heaven worlds. Because of this disruption, we offer our assistance to help ensure that the soul or spirit complex can still make this transition smoothly. Our role is to support the integration of the soul during its journey from the physical world to the spiritual realms, even when this process is interrupted by such powerful weapons. This reminds me of the hundreds of thousands of years that the people of Maldek were entangled in that knot of trauma before they could actually even begin to go through the healing process. I think it was about 500,000 years, if I'm not mistaken. But I guess something similar would have happened, or did happen, though I don't know if it took the same amount of time, because they don't reveal that later in the session. In the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombings. The questioner, can you please give me an example from, let's say, Hiroshima or Nagasaki of how this is done? And then Ra, those who were destroyed not by radiation, but by the trauma of the energy release, found not only the body-mind-spirit complex made inviolable, so the physical vessel, but also a disarrangement of that unique vibratory complex you have called the spirit complex, which we understand as a mind-body-spirit complex. So not body, mind, spirit, but mind, body, spirit, to be completely disarranged without possibility of reintegration. Just take a moment. Such a loss would have been a significant blow to the Creator, as it would mean the permanent loss of a part of the Creator's own essence. I have a question about this, but I'm going to keep finishing Ra's thought before I pose my thoughts. And thus, we were given permission not to stop the events, but to ensure the survival of the disembodied mind-body-spirit complex. This we did in those events which you mention, losing no spirit or portion or holograph or microcosm of the macrocosmic infinite one. And then my comment, well, heck, the damage is far-reaching, way beyond the physical body and the ego self. Also, how is it that the Creator's own essence can be lost? The questioner, then tell me just vaguely how you accomplish this. And then Ra, this is accomplished through our understanding of dimensional fields of energy. The higher or more dense energy field will control the less dense. Questioner, but then, in general then, you're saying that if you will allow Earth, the population of this planet, to have a nuclear war and many deaths from that war, but you would be able to create a condition where these deaths will no more be traumatic with respect to entrance to the heaven world or astral world or whatever we call it, than death by a bullet or normal means of dying of old age. Is this correct? Rather, this is incorrect. It would be more traumatic. However, the entity would remain an entity. So in other words, it wouldn't be an entity after it's disarranged from a nuclear explosion. Questioner, can you tell me the condition of the entities who were killed in Nagasaki and Hiroshima? At this time, what is their condition? Ra, they of this trauma have not yet fully begun the healing process, haven't even fully begun. They are being helped as much as possible. The questioner, when the healing process is complete with these entities, will this experience of the death due to the nuclear bomb cause them to be regressed in their climb toward the fourth density? Interesting question. And then Ra, such actions as nuclear destruction affect the entire planet. There are no differences at this level of destruction, and the planet will need to be healed. Questioner, I was thinking specifically if an entity was in Hiroshima or Nagasaki at the time that he was reaching harvestability at the end of our cycle. Would this death by nuclear bomb possibly create such trauma that he would not be able to be harvestable at the end of the cycle? That was specifically my question. Ra, this is incorrect. Once the healing has taken place, the harvest may go forth unimpeded. However, the entire planet will undergo healing for this action, no distinction being made between victim and aggressor, this due to damage done to the planet. The questioner, and then, can you describe the mechanism of planetary healing? Ra, healing is a process of acceptance, forgiveness, and if possible, restitution. The restitution not being available in time-space, there are many among your peoples now attempting restitution while in the physical. I'm just thinking of individuals, that often individuals must heal without restitution. The questioner, how do these people attempt this restitution in the physical? Ra, these attempt feelings of love towards the planet and comfort and healing of the scars and the imbalances of their actions. Send love to the planet, guys. Questioner, then as the UFO phenomena was made obvious to many of the population, many groups of people reported contact, many groups of people reported telepathic communication with UFO entities, and many recorded the results of what we consider telepathic communication. Was the Confederation oriented to impressing telepathic communication on groups that became interested in UFOs? Ra, this is correct. Although some of our members have removed themselves from the time-space using thought-form projections into your space-time and have chosen from time to time, with permission of the Council, to appear in your skies without landing. The questioner, then are all of the landings that have occurred, except for the landing when Eisenhower was contacted, Are all of those landings of the Orion group or similar type groups? Ra, except for isolated instances of those, shall we say, no affiliation, this is correct. Questioner, is it necessary in each case for the entity who is contacted in one of these landings to be calling the Orion group, or do some of these entities come in contact with the Orion group even though they are not calling that group? Ra, in order to fully grasp the mindset of fourth density negative beings, it's important to understand that their perspective is quite challenging for us to comprehend. When these entities access our third density reality, often through metaphysical windows or gateways, they act according to their own intentions, and the impact of their intentions depends entirely on the polarity or spiritual orientation of those they encounter. These negative beings genuinely believe that loving oneself is equivalent to loving all. This is kind of baffling. I'll share my thoughts on it in a moment, but just really pay attention for this whole paragraph. I'll start from the beginning of the paragraph again. These negative beings genuinely believe that loving oneself is equivalent to loving all. I didn't even think that they thought about loving all. I will continue. They see each other being they encounter as an opportunity to either teach or enslave. This we are familiar with, right? With the ultimate goal of spreading the philosophy of self-love. By doing so, they aim to cultivate a harvest of beings who are aligned with the fourth density negative, where the focus is on serving the self above all else. I don't know about you, but messages of self-love are everywhere at the moment. Okay, let me read the thoughts that I've written. I can see how self-love without extending to other selves can be harmful. I think most of us know people who have difficulty loving others. But my goodness, this puts another question mark in my mind from two perspectives. Number one, where on earth is the line between service to others and service to self with regard to loving the self and loving others? Number two, if this information is not carefully navigated, we could end up with a bunch of martyrs unnecessarily self-sacrificing. Love without wisdom, we've talked about this before. Goodness knows many of our light workers and wanderers already struggle with this balance. And then personally, when I began learning to love and accept myself unconditionally, that love and acceptance automatically flowed outward. My heart had opened enough to flow to every living and non-living thing, without judgment or preference. Self-acceptance was the key to self-love that became unconditional, universal love of all, and it did not exclude self-love. So I'm just going to leave it at that and just caution or approach this cautiously and as much from higher consciousness as possible. It does not mean do not love yourself. Moving on, the questioner. Then I am assuming all of the UFO groups who were getting telepathic contact from the Confederation were high priority targets from the Orion Crusaders, and I would assume that a large percentage of them had their information polluted then. Do you have any idea what percentage of these groups were heavily polluted by the Orion information, and if any of them were able to remain purely a Confederation channel? And then Ra, to give you this information would be to infringe upon the free will or confusion of some living. We can only ask each group to consider the relative effect of philosophy and your so-called specific information. It is not the specificity of the information which attracts negative influences. It is the importance placed upon it. This came up in a previous session. I cannot remember exactly which session, but it was on the need to have answers, the need to know, to understand, that pushes us into a self-serving path. It's really a tricky one because the whole thing of UFOs becoming visible to us to spark the curiosity to start questioning in the direction of the law of one, right? To start asking these questions about what else exists out there beyond my physical reality and my ego self. The experiences that we have in meditation that spark this curiosity toward understanding them, toward seeking knowledge and wisdom around them. It's another one of these where's the line questions. Okay, moving on with Ra. He continues, this is why we iterate quite often when asked for specific information that it pales to insignificance. Just as the grass withers and dies while the love and the light of the one infinite creator redounds to the very infinite realms of creation forever and ever, creating and creating itself in perpetuity. Why then be concerned with the grass that blooms, withers, and dies in its seasons, only to grow once again due to the infinite love and light of the one creator? This is the message we bring. Each entity is only superficially that which blooms and dies. In the deeper sense, there is no end to beingness. I can get down with that. I feel that with regard to not being too attached to what comes and goes. I had a conversation today actually with one of my clients about being attached to never-ending healing, getting stuck in the idea that we must forever be healing this ego, this wounded self, and how it keeps us stuck in that loop. But when we expand our consciousness enough and we start to identify with something much bigger than the ego, we see from that perspective, and again I speak from experience, there was never any healing that needed to be done because nothing was ever broken. Because there was never a problem, there was never any imperfection. It is just from the ego's perception, from the limited, contracted self, that we want to understand, that we want to fix, that we want to change, that we want to heal, forever healing. I'm not saying that there is no value in the process of healing. I am saying that we get stuck. We get stuck in the identification of this broken self, and we'll never get out of it. Essentially, it's start doing the work, start working on those parts of the self that we view from an ego perception as being imperfect, as being broken or wounded. Start giving love to those parts and accepting those parts, and then once you have shown yourself that you can do this process with one thing that felt like you could never accept and love, continue to extend that love, especially when things arise, but begin to expand beyond the need to remain there, if that makes sense. But nonetheless, continuing on with the questioner, as you have stated before, it is a straight and narrow path. There are many distractions. I plan to create an introduction to the law of one, traveling through and hitting the high points of the 75,000-year cycle. Possibly a few questions into the general future. After this introduction to the law of one, I would like to get directly to the main work, which is creating an understanding that can be disseminated to those who would ask for it, and only to those who would ask for it, for an understanding that can allow them to greatly accelerate their evolution. I'm very appreciative and feel it's a great honor and privilege to be doing this, and hope that we can accomplish this next phase. I have a question that the instrument has asked. She says, you speak of various types of energy blockages and transfers, positive and negative, that may take place due to participation in our sexual reproductive complex of actions. She states, please explain these blockages and energy transfers with emphasis upon what an individual seeking to be in accordance with the law of one may positively do in this area? Is it possible for you to answer this question? And then Ra, it is partially possible given the background we have laid. This is properly a more advanced question. Due to the specificity of the question, we may give a general answer. The first energy transfer is red ray. It is a random transfer having to do only with your reproductive system. The orange and yellow ray attempts to have sexual intercourse create, firstly, a blockage if only one entity vibrates in this area, thus causing the entity vibrating sexually in this area to have a never-ending appetite for this activity. What these vibratory levels are seeking is green ray activity. There is a possibility of orange or yellow ray energy transfer, this being polarizing towards the negative, one being seen as object rather than other self, and other seeing itself as plunderer or master of the situation. Take a moment to take that in and maybe just reflect on any moments where you have either been or seen yourself as the master or seen yourself as an object. Moving on. In fourth ray, there are two possibilities. Firstly, if both vibrate in third ray, there will be a mutually strengthening energy transfer. The negative or female, as you call it, drawing the energy from the roots of the beingness up through the energy centers, thus being physically revitalized, the positive or male polarity, as it is deemed in your illusion, finding in this energy transfer an inspiration which satisfies and feeds the spirit portion of the body-mind-spirit complex, thus both being polarized and releasing the excess of that which has in abundance by nature of intelligence infinity, that is negative intuitive, positive physical energies, as you may call them. This energy transfer being blocked only if one or both entities have fear of possession, of being possessed, of desiring possession, or desiring being possessed. Take that in for a moment. The other green ray possibility is that of one entity offering green ray energy, the other not offering energy of the universal love energy. This resulting in a blockage of energy for the one not green ray, thus increasing frustration or appetite, the green ray being polarizing slightly towards service to others. The blue ray energy transfer is somewhat rare among your people at this time, but is of great aid due to energy transfers involved in becoming able to express the self without reservation or fear. Take that in. The indigo ray transfer is extremely rare among your people. This is the sacramental portion of the body complex, whereby contact may be made through the violet ray with intelligent infinity. No blockages may occur at these latter two levels due to the fact that if both entities are not ready for this energy, it is not visible, and neither transfer nor blockage may take place. It is as though the distributor were removed from a powerful engine. This instrument was able, as an example of this working, to baffle the Orion group during and then tape blank experiences. They don't have that, they just have tape blank. I think something happened in the tape at that moment, as you call this substance, due to the fact that it effectively completely opened other self to third ray. We correct this instrument. It is growing low in vital energy, green ray energy, and partially open other self to blue ray interaction. And then my thoughts on this that I will read. I guess this is what they really mean by unequally yoked. I remember listening to someone talking about what it really means to be unequally yoked. They use chakras as an example to illustrate the disharmony. That each balanced chakra would determine your values essentially as an individual, and those would determine the right partner romantically for you. But if you have not both activated and balanced the same level in your chakra system, your relationship will not work, or it will be very tumultuous. This to me is one of the reasons why it is so difficult for light workers, wanderers, and starseeds to find partners, and often have unsuccessful relationships. You cannot do what you came here to do if you remain in romantic connection of the sort that contracts your ability to activate higher levels of consciousness. Moving on, the questioner. The instrument asks, how long do the debilitative effects that I am experiencing from the use of LSD last? Ra, firstly, the period of weakness of bodily complex is approximately 3 of your lunar cycles. The first ingestion causing approximately 1 of your lunar cycles, the second having a cumulative or doubling effect. And they end the session there. There were quite a few moments of insight for me anyway in this session. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and I wish you guys a really beautiful evening, and I will see you in session 27. Lots and lots of love and light.